Welcome to Coworking, folks. We will do our reading of Chapter 12, which is Metadata Management, and that is 11% of the CDMP Fundamentals exam. It's one of the options for the specialist exams, so it is quite a valuable one to be familiar with. Today, we are going to do co-working. What this means is we're going to spend the next period of time silently reading the data management body of knowledge with a focus on Chapter 12, and then we'll come together at the end of our work period and we'll have a discussion break. And then we'll go back and do another session of reading and then another discussion break. And then finally, we'll do one more period of reading. So that's 3 total work sessions. And then we'll wrap things up at the end to say goodbye. Without further ado, we will get started with the section of work where we'll silently read the DMBOK. We have 8 minutes left in this session. And then at the end of time, we will come together to talk about any questions or comments on what we read. Okay, that was a pretty short one. Do you have any feedback based on the time that you had to go through the DMBOK?
I love this topic. So the biggest challenge is since it's one step removed from the actual data, it's convincing your organization and others of the importance of it. We are beginning to see the use of data, but now we're talking about metadata.
That's interesting because I think of metadata as where a lot of the value is, a lot of important qualitative information about the content of the data. You can learn so much from quantitative data, like how often a data set is accessed in terms of being an important component of its value. That's interesting that you're facing that challenge because as a data person, it seems like not everyone sees it the same way. Bongo posted in the chat, interested in the relationship between metadata management and data quality. That's certainly a valuable consideration. I don't know if you can put more in the chat about this, but Kim says, I have heard the phrase data about data, and now I understand it is much more than that. I would be curious to hear what you mean by that statement. But if I were to jump in on this, this is what we wrote about in our mid-November newsletter. So if you're not already signed up for that, you can get signed up on the Data Strategy Pros site. But if you're quantifying data's value, it might be data about the data about the data, because a lot of times value is wrapped up in the value of the metadata. Metadata is like a whole host of derivatives of ways to understand the data. It's not just metadata, but it could also be metadata and so on. But then in terms of how we communicate about metadata, as much as we can make it seem normal, valuable data of its own accord, maybe that helps Anand to deal with the challenge that you're facing at work is like, oh, it's actually not metadata. It's data in and of its own right with its own equal value.
Hey, Nichols.
Hi,
Yes,
Mark.
Mark. Hey, guys. I'm one of the career coaches for Data Strategy Pro, so I'm on Nicole's team. To the question earlier on metadata management being a challenge to raise within the company or within the enterprise, I have done this several times as a game, actually. When we have this topic of metadata management, one of the games that you can play is that Wikipedia game. If you think about it, the strength that Google search has and Wikipedia has is really how well they link metadata together. The game of Wikipedia is like you start with Britney Spears and how do you get to GE from Britney Spears? People really find a way. They have 5 jumps, 6 jumps, and so forth. Then you come to a relevant company question. How hard is it for us from a product data to jump to our customer data? Do we even have that linkage now? And that's where the metadata comes into power because the metadata management allows us to find patterns in the data, same as how we connect Britney Spears to a company. It finds patterns and linkages between the data that we didn't really know of in the past. So when we have a product defect and we have to inform customers, how quick can we connect now products to customer? It's actually with the metadata that we make that connection happen and make that pattern happen. That's where the power comes in around metadata management. That's an easy way to introduce the topic. I always use the example of Google search for metadata and also Wikipedia.
That's brilliant. I love that idea.
Hi, Nicole.
Hey,
I've seen it being an attorney, that is another way of looking at metadata because corporations need to have the metadata to be able to produce documents that are relevant to a claim. And the courts require that the corporations keep their metadata and produce their files and their evidence with the metadata. So I'm assuming it'll be the book divides it in business metadata, but I'm sure business metadata is not used in these type of cases, but technical and operational metadata might be requested from the parties in a claim.
that's a good, relevant, real world example. Very cool. If other people have observations about this topic, we have about 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Uday. So my observation on the metadata is on data management starts with the data catalog model, right?
Yeah.
data dictionary, right? These are all I consider as a metadata. Database is the core. Before that, we maintain all these artifacts in the name of metadata, right? Whatever I said, data dictionary, model, conceptual, logical, everywhere all data related attributes are storing, right? And then concepts around the business terminology, concepts, glossary terms. These are all I consider as a metadata. Please correct me if I am wrong.
That sounds great to me. Good advice for people to get started with a catalog.
And then metadata helps to identify the personal information, the sensitive complaints related.
Yeah, metadata is a huge contributing factor to good data security.
Right.
Absolutely. And probably in terms of operationalizing best practices at your org, it starts with a data catalog or a data dictionary. Those are all really great points. Let's go to our next reading session. And then there's some questions that are still unaddressed. And so we can get to those during the next discussion break. All right. Thanks everybody for your attention. I'm going to start the discussion with a question that Adam posted in the chat last discussion break. So Adam says, doesn't bidirectional architecture increase risk? Which makes sense. If the risk we're talking about is the risk of a data quality mistake, because if you're updating things in multiple places, then yes, it also increases the attack surface for potential bad actors because you're having your data stored in multiple places, and inherently there's more risk the more duplication that you potentially have across your system. If you have a centralized metadata repository, then that is a target. I would be really curious to hear what other data practitioners think about that question. There's lots of different kinds of risk when we're talking about data, so everything increases risk.
Does that basically mean that you're putting the same data in two different places?
Yeah. So bidirectional means that there's two places and that it can be updated in either place. Either system can be the location where the update is occurring. And then it gets pushed either from the source system to the centralized repository or the reverse.
Here is my 2 cents around it, or I usually say my 2 bytes around it. Since we're technologists, we use bytes, BY, not BI. So first of all, having a central place where you manage your metadata with proper data governance, ownership, and tracking security and so forth, I would actually say from experience is that it reduces risk, mainly because you have a central place where you can see your landscape across different systems, different processes. To have that one central catalog where you can really see, let's say you want to know if it's well managed and all your system, your strategic sources in your enterprise are ingested in your data catalog. For example, you want to see all PII information in the company, if it's rightly tagged and so forth. You have a central way now to manage and see that overview. You can see your landscape. You don't have to go to SAP and ask them, what is your PII? You don't have to go to Salesforce and ask them, what is your PII data? You don't have to go to different processes all over the company. In that way, to have that one place where you can go and view, I would say reduces the risk because then strategic sources are there, strategic data is there. You don't have to go anywhere else. You have a one place that you can trust and have the overview with. That's how I see how metadata management can reduce risk. As to the bidirectional update, the concept of what is your golden record and what is your system of truth will come in, because how I've seen it being adopted is that even though you have the data catalog and you might have metadata in one way or another replicated or duplicated over in the data catalog and you're tracking data quality, for example, there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you change the metadata or even that the data itself in the data catalog. The metadata management helps you track where in your system landscape are you deficient in your data. It will give you that oversight so that you can go to that system and tell them, hey, your data quality is on 80% based on our rules. So the adjustment that you need to do on your side so that we can reflect it. So I always saw the data catalog almost like a control center of your data where you can see where in the company are we going bad with data quality, where are we going wrong. But I didn't really see it as the central place where you fix the data. It's a place where you can manage and have that overview, but you still go to the source and tell them, hey, these are your problems, fix it. Have a roadmap of when you want to fix that. That's how I see the right way to do the update to the data quality, for example. I hope I'm making sense though.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it is a good idea to have a source of truth. I just want to share the book with those who are on the call. The different approaches for metadata storage are discussed in this section 1.3.6, and it goes through a variety of options. So your options are centralized, distributed, hybrid, or bidirectional. If you are following along at home, this is discussed on page 433. Mark, in your experience, what is the metadata storage architecture that you would recommend to data practitioners?
In my opinion, honestly, the best answer is it depends on really how the company functions, how the system functions. It depends per company. But as per my preference, a hybrid model is a preferred way so that you can always have that flexibility. It means that, sure, there are some organizations that are happy to have a metadata management tool do the update to their source systems. There are some companies that have a little bit closer ownership and closer authoritative borders around it, where the SAP team says, do not touch our data, do not touch our metadata. We do the updates ourselves. We have to go through a process and so forth. So to have that hybrid where you could do the updates to applications that are open enough and then still have a little bit of flexibility for applications or application owners that are a little bit more stubborn on having that metadata being managed for them outside their systems. Hybrid would be my preference to go for, because then you leave it open to being flexible and open to options.
Nice. Thanks for this. Let's go back to our reading. And then after that, we will wrap up and say goodbye. Good luck, everyone, with the final focus session. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. It was really fun to chat about metadata with you. This is a really important topic, whether you see metadata as having value equal to the value of your data. It's so different, but it is a huge source of value. Hopefully, you're able to find ways to communicate that to your stakeholders, framing metadata as data in and of its own right, or whether you're navigating the technical considerations about how to store metadata appropriately, making architectural choices and things like this. Hopefully, you found this session to be beneficial. If you want to set up some more time to chat with Mark, he truly is an amazing resource for the community, given his experience in data governance. He's been working in the field for more than 15 years. So please hit us up for career coaching if that's something you're interested in. And we also do micro consulting services. We're calling those document review right now, so you can find that on our products page. In terms of preparing for the CDMP fundamentals, this topic is 11%. So you can expect to see, on average, 11 questions about metadata management. It's one of the really important ones. Next month is December, so we actually will be wrapping up the year with 2 chapters. We're doing data quality, which is also 11%, alongside big data. So we'll do them together. Big data, shrug it off if you want. It's only 2% of the questions, but data quality, obviously, that's pretty crucial. Hopefully, we'll see you there. It'll be mid-December. One other thing I wanted to highlight, Mark, do you want to talk about the CDMP Q&A we have in a couple weeks?
We'll have the answers. You have the questions. So on November 24th, that's next Friday, and also on December 15th, so right before Christmas, it's one of the last sessions that we'll do for the year at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. We'll be hosting a Q&A session. We'll go through the basic things for preparing for the CDMP, things that you have to know about the exams, the structure, and so forth, and also advice and discussion groups that we'll have for next year. So we'll give you an end-to-end run of the CDMP exam and also some advice on how to prepare for it. So again, that's next Friday, November 24th and December 15th at 8:30 Eastern.
Thank you very much for that summary, Mark. That was a good debrief. That's all I have in terms of announcements. Thank you so much for joining. It was so nice to see friends old and new. All right. Hopefully see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.